White Karen tries to humiliate a black customer. Then her true identity is revealed. It all began with the warm hum of a Saturday morning, a gentle sun peeking through the partly cloudy sky, a light breeze carrying the scent of fresh coffee and street food through the bustling avenues of downtown Savannah. The sidewalks were already crowded with people leisurely strolling or hurrying to weekend errands. Cars rolled by in patient streams, and local shops boasted colorful awnings, promising antiques, baked goods, clothing deals, and more. Amid this lively scene, Daniel stepped off the city bus near Jackson Square, her heels clicking softly on the pavement. She was in her mid-30s, tall and poised, with skin the color of roasted mahogany and long braids swept back in a sleek low ponytail. Wore a crisp white blouse, expertly tailored navy slacks, and carried a discreetly stylish handbag. One might guess she was on her way to an important meeting, or perhaps just a woman with impeccable fashion sense on a weekend outing. She had a radiant smile and a calm self-assuredness that came from hard-earned success. Yet none of that was obvious at first glance, preferred to keep her identity and accomplishments below the radar. She checked her watch. 9:32 a.m. She had a few items to check off her list. Pick up a unique gift for a friend's baby shower, drop by a specialty shop for a limited edition book, and perhaps enjoy a leisurely lunch if time allowed. The baby shower gift was most pressing, so she decided to start at the Little Heart Boutique, a well-known store on the corner that offered handcrafted baby apparel, nursery, and children's furniture. The shop had a glowing reputation for high-quality items, along with sometimes staggering price tags. Had heard they offered one-of-a-kind plush toys, and she wanted something truly special for her close friend's first child. As approached the Little Heart Boutique, she admired the pastel pink, wrought iron signage, and tall display windows showing adorable infant outfits and stuffed animals. A tiny bell chimed overhead when she pushed open the glass door. The interior was well lit, and the arrangement had a gentle whimsy. Rows of neatly arranged baby garments and shelves of plush bears, rabbits, and elephants. Soft lullabies played at a low volume, and the faint aroma of lavender wafted through the air. Paused near a display of crocheted baby blankets, appreciating the craftsmanship. Immediately, she felt the hush of the store settle around her, comforting and almost soothing. For a moment, she let herself relax, forgetting her busy schedule. She'd come to find something special, not just off the standard gift registry. She believed in giving gifts that carried a sense of heartfelt care. "Good morning," came a chipper voice from somewhere behind the counter. Glanced up. Two employees stood near the register. One was a younger woman with short, curly hair who seemed busy folding some infant onesies. The other was older, perhaps early 50s, her hair in a tight bob, wearing a pastel cardigan. She had that practiced smile of a seasoned sales associate, but her eyes flickered over with a curiosity that felt more like scrutiny. "Good morning," replied warmly. "Let us know if you need help finding anything," the younger associate said, then resumed her folding. The older woman, whose name tag read Karen, offered a narrow-lipped smile. "Yes, welcome to the Little Heart Boutique." She lingered, gaze lingering on his face, her posture stiff. "Are you looking for something in particular?" Returned a polite nod. "I'm shopping for a gift baby shower for a close friend." "How nice," Karen said. "We have a wide selection, girls or boys." "A baby girl," answered, crossing to a small display of stuffed animals. Karen placed her hands on her hips, took one step forward. "Oh, well, just so you know, these are all custom items. Handcrafted. The price ranges can be rather high. We specialize in high-end baby goods for families who are discerning." Paused. "I understand. That's actually why I came. My friend loves unique artisanal things." Karen's polite mask stayed in place, but something about her tone sharpened. "Yes, well, just making sure you're aware. Some customers don't realize. We do have a clearance section at the back, if that's more suitable for you." Felt a flicker of annoyance. She recognized the subtext. She'd encountered that brand of assumption many times. The idea that a black woman, especially one browsing high-end goods, might be out of her price range or in the wrong store. Had faced it in upscale jewelry shops, real estate offices, even car dealerships. Every single time, she reminded herself to breathe. She forced a small smile. "Thank you, but I'm all right. I'm actually looking for a custom plush toy if possible, maybe crocheted or embroidered, something special." Karen's brows lifted. "A custom plush, those can run over $100, sometimes more depending on the details." Her eyes flitted over his outfit again, as if searching for a sign of wealth or lack thereof. If you're sure. Perhaps you'd like to check prices before deciding. I'm sure, said crisply, her frustration surfacing in the clipped tone of her reply. Then she pivoted slightly, indicating she'd like to browse on her own. Corinne parted her lips as if to say something else, but then seemed to think better of it. She turned with a sniff and walked to the counter. Exhaled, letting the tension pass. She'd come for a lovely gift, not a confrontation. She moved slowly through the displays, pausing to admire delicate knitted booties, ruffled dresses, and intricately patterned quilts. Though the shop wasn't large, every item looked meticulously crafted, and in truth meticulously expensive. Had saved a comfortable nest egg over the past decade. She could afford a special piece for her friend's baby. She had no intention of explaining that to the store clerk. At last, she reached a corner shelf displaying plush animals. Among them was a handmade stuffed elephant with big, floppy ears sewn from floral-patterned fabric. Its body was soft gray linen, and an embroidered heart adorned its chest. A small tag read, "Hand-stitched by local artisan. Price, $175. His first thought was that it was perfect. Her friend, Ebony, adored elephants. The heart embroidery gave it a sweet, timeless charm, and the color scheme was flexible enough for any nursery. Held the elephant gently in her hands, feeling the texture of the linen. The craftsmanship was impeccable. She imagined Ebony opening the gift at the shower, squealing with delight, possibly shedding a tear at such a personal, thoughtful present. This was exactly the kind of gift Ebony would treasure and eventually pass down. "May I help you with that?" Corinne's voice startled out of her reverie. The older woman had appeared at her shoulder, arms folded. She wore a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. Pivoted, the elephant cradled against her chest. "Yes, I'd like to purchase this, please." Corinne made a show of glancing at the price tag. "Oh, that one is quite expensive, dear. Perhaps you'd prefer something more modest." Fought to keep her tone polite. "No, this is perfect, I'll take it." Corinne's eyebrows rose. "I see. Well, if that's your choice, let's ring it up." They walked to the register. The younger employee had disappeared into the back room, leaving and Corinne alone in the main area. Followed, determined to remain unruffled. She would buy the elephant, thank them, and move on with her day. $175 plus tax, Corinne announced, typing it into the register. "Your total is $187, $38, cash or credit." "Credit," said, sliding her card from her wallet. Corinne took the card, her eyes darting to the name. M. Daniels. For a moment, something flickered across Corinne's face as if the name brought up a question. Then Corinne swiped the card. The machine beeped. She frowned at the screen. "It's declined," blinked, her chest tightening. Declined? She had no reason to suspect that. She always paid her bills on time, and her credit limit was more than sufficient. Corinne narrowed her eyes. Yes, declined. Possibly insufficient funds or an expired card. She held out the card, her expression triumphant, as if she'd caught in a lie. Confused and self-conscious, took back the card. She checked the expiration date. It was still valid for several more years. "That's strange. Could you try it again, maybe? Sometimes it's a glitch." Corinne gave a long-suffering sigh. "Fine." She swiped it again, another beep. She shook her head, declined. "Do you have another form of payment? Maybe a debit card?" Felt heat flush her cheeks. People in the store, a couple had wandered in, might be overheating. She rummaged in her wallet for another card. The only other thing she had was her personal debit card, which definitely had enough to cover $187, but it was from a smaller bank. She handed it over, trying to keep her composure. Corinne took the second card, scanning it with the same meticulous slowness. Another beep. She frowned theatrically. "Also declined," she announced, voice loud enough to draw a few curious glances. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but it seems your cards are being rejected." Stomach twisted. Could the card reader be malfunctioning, or was Corinne inputting something incorrectly? "That's impossible," said, struggling to keep a level tone. "I have more than enough in my account. Could there be an issue with your system?" Corinne pursed her lips. "I don't think so. We've had no problem with other transactions today. It's possible your bank flagged your purchases." She paused, arching an eyebrow. "Or maybe your accounts are, well, let's just say it wouldn't be the first time someone tried to buy something out of their price range." Bristled. The insinuation stung deeply. She was being accused of lacking the funds and trying to front. She drew a deep breath. "Let me call my bank," she said calmly. "I'm sure there's a mistake." Corinne shrugged. "By all means, do what you need to do." Meanwhile, I should put the item aside for paying customers, unless you're certain you can cover it. Swallowed her anger. She'd never had trouble with her cards. Could the machine be glitchy? Or was Karen messing with her on purpose? She stepped aside, retrieving her phone. She dialed the toll-free number for her credit card company, listening to the automated prompts. After a few minutes, a representative came on the line. Provided her card info, explained the situation, and asked if there was a hold or an issue. The rep checked. There was nothing wrong with the account, no suspicious activity. They confirmed she had ample available credit and that no transaction from the Little Heart Boutique had even been attempted. She ended the call, heart-pounding, so the store's machine likely never ran it properly. Or someone canceled it mid-transaction. She turned to Karen, who stood behind the counter with an air of bored superiority, fiddling with her nails. My card company says there's no issue. Could you try once more? Or maybe you have a different register I can use. Karen shook her head, a patronizing sigh escaping her lips. I've already tried twice. Usually, if it's valid, it goes through. If I keep running it, that can trigger fraud alerts. She set the plush elephant aside, placing it behind the counter. Perhaps you can come back when your finances are in order. Felt a wave of embarrassment, conscious that a few other shoppers were casting curious glances. She took a steadying breath, stepping closer, voice low. Look, I just spoke to the bank. They said the transaction never even appeared. Could your machine be malfunctioning? I highly doubt it, Karen said, a certain smugness coloring her tone. I processed other sales this morning with no issue. Maybe it's your card or your story. Excuse me. Karen gave her a narrow, condescending smile. Sometimes people try to purchase above their means and they get upset when reality hits. I'm sure it's frustrating, but we can't hold items for indefinite periods. We cater to serious buyers. Anger flared hot in his chest. She was about to retort when the younger associate emerged from the back room. The associate sensed the tension in the air, her gaze darting between and Karen. Is everything okay? Karen offered the girl a tight-lipped smile. Yes, just dealing with a declined transaction, twice. The associate looked at sympathetically. Sometimes the chip readers act up. Did you want me to ring it at the second register? Karen's head snapped in the younger woman's direction. I don't think that's necessary, Jessica. If it's declined, it's declined. Let's not waste more time. Seize the moment. Actually, I'd appreciate trying the second register if that's an option. My bank confirmed there's no hold on my card. She turned a pleading glance to the younger associate. Please. Jessica hesitated, glancing uneasily at Karen, who seemed displeased. Then Jessica nodded. Sure thing, let me unlock it. She hurried to the secondary register at the far end of the counter, typing in a code. Followed Jessica. She handed her credit card over, ignoring Karen's disapproving huff. Jessica scanned it carefully, tapped a few keys. The system beeped once, then printed a receipt. It went through, Jessica said, relief coloring her voice. Your total is $187, $38, and it was approved. Felt a surge of triumph mixed with indignation. She flicked her gaze toward Karen, whose face tightened in surprise. Karen quickly schooled her features into a veneer of neutrality. Was all she said. Jessica offered a small smile. Would you like me to wrap the elephant for you? Yes, please, replied, handing over the plush toy. It's a baby shower gift, thank you so much. While Jessica rang up the purchase properly and printed the gift receipt, Karen hovered behind them, arms crossed, her expression sour. Felt the woman's anger radiating, as though she'd been thwarted in an attempt to expose as a fraud. Perhaps Karen took offense that a black woman in professional attire could actually afford the boutique's items. Stared straight ahead, refusing to engage in more conflict. She just wanted to finalize her purchase and leave. Once the transaction was completed, Jessica carefully wrapped the stuffed elephant in soft pink tissue paper and slipped it into a white box tied with a pastel ribbon. She handed it to, here you go, congratulations or congrats to your friend, she added with a small, genuine grin. Thank you, said. She tucked the receipt into her purse. Then she turned to Karen, leveling her with a cool gaze. Have a nice day. Karen pressed her lips into a thin line, not responding. Turned on her heel and walked out of the store, the small bell jingling overhead as she exited into the bright morning sun. A swirl of conflicting emotions churned in her chest, anger, embarrassment, vindication. She reminded herself that she had succeeded in getting the gift, which was the main goal. But the sting of Karen's suspicion lingered. Outside, she took a moment to breathe. The sidewalk bustled with, oblivious to her internal turmoil. She spotted a nearby bench under a shade tree, carried her bag there, and sat. She pulled out her phone, still unsettled. A quick glance at the time told her it was barely after 10. She'd planned to visit the limited edition bookstore next, but her mood was soured. A few seconds later, her phone buzzed, a call from a number she recognized as her mother's. She answered. "Hey, sweetheart," her mother's warm voice greeted. "Are you busy?" Exhaled. "Not too busy, just had a bit of a stressful shopping experience. What's up?" They spoke briefly about family news, her mother's upcoming vacation, her father's retirement dinner. His mother sensed her tension. "You sound upset. Everything okay?" Hesitated, then gave a condensed version of the incident. The suspicion, the declined card fiasco, the humiliating tone from Karen. Her mother's voice bristled with anger on her behalf, but also sadness that her daughter was still dealing with such prejudice. "I'm sorry you had to go through that," her mother said softly. "It's all right, I got the gift anyway," replied with forced lightness. But her mother's concern comforted her, reminded her she wasn't alone. After hanging up, steeled herself. She couldn't let one person's bigotry ruin her entire day. She decided to drop by the bookstore as planned, then maybe treat herself to a nice lunch. She picked up her bag with the baby gift, headed down the sidewalk, and tried to recapture a sense of normalcy. The specialized bookstore called & Pine was a short walk away. It was known for rare prints, first editions, and scholarly works that didn't appear in big chain stores. Had ordered a rare edition of a classic novel for her personal library. She adored collecting such treasures. The staff at & Pine already knew her by name from previous visits. When she entered, a bell tinkled overhead, releasing the familiar smell of old paper and polished wood. Shelves lined the walls from floor to ceiling, each aisle carefully labeled. A man at the counter, a middle-aged book enthusiast, beamed. "Ms. Daniels, your special order arrived yesterday. I was hoping you'd pop in soon." Lick smiled, her shoulders relaxing for the first time in an hour. "Thanks, I'm so excited to see it." Retrieved a slim, cloth-bound volume from behind the counter, unveiling it like a precious artifact. "Here we are. A 1927 limited pressing of A Rainy Season in the Garden. The printing on this is gorgeous. You won't find it anywhere else in the region." Took the book gently, admiring the gold-embossed title and the delicate typography. She felt the pages, inhaling that faint antique scent. It was magnificent. This was the sort of item that reminded her why she cherished collecting books so passionately. They chatted briefly about the edition's background, the publisher's history, and possible future acquisitions. Then handed over her credit card. This time it worked without a hitch. Rung her up with ease, and she left & Pine feeling a renewed sense of peace. Her earlier anger at Karen began to fade, replaced by excitement for Ebony's baby shower and gratitude for the friendly staff at the bookstore. Still, couldn't help replaying the morning's humiliating scene. She found herself imagining retorts, things she could said, but she realized it wouldn't have mattered. Karen had been determined to see her as inferior or unqualified to shop there. A small voice inside asked, should she let the store's owner know? Possibly post a review? But disliked fueling negativity. She often handled prejudice by letting her achievements and confidence speak for themselves. With both errands done, decided she deserved a nice lunch at her favorite bistro near the riverfront. She strolled the old cobblestone roads, passing tourists snapping photos of historical buildings, street musicians performing with open guitar cases for tips. The city's charm still shone bright, despite the morning's unpleasant encounter. Meanwhile, back at the Little Heart Boutique, the atmosphere remained tense. Karen resumed her spot behind the primary register, still stewing over the fiasco with. It irritated Karen that the younger associate, Jessica, had undermined her. And Karen's pride was wounded that her assumption about finances turned out to be embarrassingly incorrect. She'd quietly wrung out 3 other customers, but her forced politeness left a stale aftertaste. Jessica, noticing Karen's sour mood, tried to focus on tasks, folding, restocking, greeting new arrivals. Yet she felt uneasy. It wasn't the first time she'd seen Karen act suspiciously or condescendingly toward certain customers. Jessica was new, but the pattern was glaring enough to make her uncomfortable. Around midday, business slowed and the store was empty except for staff. Jessica mustered some courage. "Mrs.," she said softly, stepping near the register. "About earlier with that customer's card. You said it was declined, but it worked fine at the second register. Maybe we should have the main reader checked." Karen turned a glare on Jessica, a muscle in her jaw flexing. The machine was fine, probably user error or something else. I don't appreciate you making me look incompetent in front of customers. Jessica blinked. I didn't mean to, she seemed so upset and it turned out her card was good. Karen sighed, dismissing it with a wave of her hand. It's done now, let's move on. Jessica nodded, but inside she felt a pang of disappointment. She decided it wasn't worth pushing further. She liked this job and didn't want to create conflict. But something about the situation gnawed at her. That afternoon, a handful of people came through, mostly moms, some expectant parents. Karen handled them with courtesy, though her friendly facade had a brittle edge. She kept glancing at the door as though expecting trouble. Jessica wondered if Karen was anxious about a complaint or if she was just in a foul mood. Spent her lunch at the Blue Magnolia, a charming bistro with wrought-iron patio seating overlooking the Savannah River. She indulged in a pressed panini stuffed with grilled vegetables and sipped an iced tea, letting the sweet breeze soothe her mind. She considered calling Ebony to share the ordeal, but Ebony was busy finalizing baby shower details. Decided not to stress her friend. Ebony's pregnancy was going well, but any drama might upset her. Maybe would mention it after the shower or maybe never. Ebony already had enough on her plate. Eventually headed home, tucking the gift away for safekeeping. She spent the rest of the weekend enjoying small pleasures, reading her new antique book, catching up on a Netflix series, and phone calls with relatives. She refused to let one store clerk's prejudice overshadow her life. Yet fate had a twist in store. Early Monday morning arrived at her office building, a sleek high-rise downtown. She took the elevator up to the 25th floor, where the offices of Daniels Corporate Consulting were located. That's right, was not only a successful professional. She was the CEO of her own thriving consulting firm, specializing in strategic management, diversity training, and organizational development for Fortune 500 companies. She had built the company from the ground up, leading a diverse team of experts who guided clients toward more inclusive, efficient, and profitable practices. Stepping into the main reception area, offered a warm greeting to the front desk staff, who smiled back. She walked through glass doors etched with Daniels Corporate Consulting in silver lettering. The morning promised a busy schedule, prospective client presentations, strategy sessions with her top advisors, and an upcoming event where she'd deliver the keynote address. A few hours into the day, just before lunch's assistant knocked gently on her door. Ms. Daniels, your 1 p.m. appointment is confirmed. The client rep will arrive at 12:45 to settle in. Great, replied, scanning her notes. I'll wrap up my call by then. She was finalizing a phone conference with a major corporation discussing a multi-year partnership, but lingered at the door wearing a curious expression. Is there something else? Prompted, cleared her throat. Yes, actually, our new client, the one you're meeting at 1-0. The local chain of boutique children's stores. Their lead coordinator is named Karen. I just got the file from marketing. She's apparently co-owner and chief buyer for the Little Heart Boutique and a few other branches across the region. Nick's eyes widened. The name alone was enough to bring Saturday's fiasco rushing back. Karen, she repeated quietly, her heart thumping. Is she the same? Nodded, noticing her boss's reaction. It might be the same person, yes. In fact, I checked her photo in the file, 50s bob haircut, so it's definitely her. She's coming here to discuss an organizational training program that might expand their brand, focusing on staff development, apparently. Nick pressed her lips together, feeling a surge of surprise. So the very woman who humiliated her was unknowingly about to meet with for a business consultation. The irony was almost surreal. She inhaled slowly, schooling her features. That's interesting news. Thank you for letting me know. Eyed with concern. If this is a conflict, we can reschedule or assign another consultant from the firm. Ms. Specifically requested top-level advisement, but held up a hand. No, I'll handle it. Let's keep the appointment. Just give me a moment to prepare. Gave a small nod and excused herself. Leaned back in her chair, exhaling a shaky breath. The situation had a distinctly karmic air. On Saturday, Karen had seen as some random shopper presumably unfit for her boutique's price range. Now Karen needed help in a professional capacity for a contract that would likely be worth thousands in consulting fees. A swirl of conflicting emotions filled, righteous anger, amusement, and a sense of moral responsibility. She believed in fairness and second chances, but also refused to be a doormat. She'd handle this carefully. Shortly before 12:45, finished her conference call and organized her desk. She instructed to escort Karen and any colleagues to the main conference room. Would join them promptly. She smoothed her blouse, checking her reflection in the glass panel near her office window. Professional and poised, as always. Yet adrenaline thrummed through her veins. At 12:50, buzzed. Ms. is here along with two assistants. They're seated in the conference room. Are you ready? Took a deep breath, recalling the humiliations of Saturday. Then she squared her shoulders. Yes, please bring them water or coffee and let them know I'll be in momentarily. She gave it another 5 minutes. It wouldn't hurt to let them wait, standard business practice after all. Then, collecting her portfolio and iPad, she headed down the corridor. The short walk felt surreal, as though she were stepping into a scripted drama. She reminded herself, professional courtesy above all. When she pushed open the conference room door, the first person she noticed was Karen at the far end of the table. Indeed, the same face. Bob, haughty posture, expensive pastel blazer. Karen was flipping through a brochure, talking quietly with two younger colleagues. She didn't look up immediately. Stepped forward, a confident smile on her lips. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Daniels, CEO and lead consultant here at Daniels Corporate Consulting. Welcome. Karen's voice caught mid-sentence. Her gaze lifted, freezing on face. In an instant, her expression shifted from mild interest to profound shock. You, she stammered, color draining from her cheeks. She nearly dropped the brochure, offered a polite handshake. Ms., it's nice to meet you again. She let the words linger, letting Karen recall their last encounter. Karen stood, heart pounding, eyes darting between and the door as if she wanted to bolt. Her two assistants, both in their 20s, looked perplexed, obviously unsure what was happening. You know each other? One asked, glancing from Karen to Karen forced a tight laugh. Well, yes, I didn't realize, Ms. Daniels, you... She struggled to form a coherent sentence. She'd apparently had no clue that the nobody from the boutique was actually the high-powered consultant she'd be meeting. Calm smile remained. She gestured for them to take their seats around the table. She settled at the head seat. Yes, Ms. and I had a brief meeting at the Little Heart Boutique this weekend. Then, turning to the younger staff, she extended her hand. And you are. They introduced themselves as marketing associates for the boutique's parent company. They seemed excited to be in a big corporate office, eager to discuss a possible rebranding and staff training contract. Meanwhile, Karen sat stiffly, her gaze downcast, cheeks flushed. She flicked her eyes toward nervously, allowed a small pause, let it sink in. Then she cleared her throat, turning to the overhead screen. Well, let's begin, shall we? I understand from your preliminary inquiry that you're seeking a consultant to help unify your brand across multiple branches, improve staff cohesion, and potentially incorporate some diversity and sensitivity training. Is that correct? And nodded vigorously. Karen managed a hesitant, yes, that's the idea. Her voice was shaky. She avoided direct eye contact with. So it was for diversity training too, thought Riley, her chest tightening with irony. She forcibly kept her expression neutral. Over the next 20 minutes led them through a standard pitch. She explained Daniel's corporate consulting's scope of services, success stories, and approach to organizational change. Her voice remained steady, composed. Now and then she caught Karen's furtive glances. The two younger women asked questions, took notes, and seemed genuinely enthusiastic. Karen, however, contributed little, as if overshadowed by embarrassment. Finally, the conversation shifted to specifics about the Little Heart Boutique. Explained their expansion goals. They wanted to open new stores in affluent neighborhoods, aiming for a consistent brand image and top-notch customer relations. They hoped to train staff to handle a wide range of clientele graciously and fairly. Almost laughed internally at that last phrase. Karen cleared her throat, forcing a professional tone. We pride ourselves on an upscale customer experience, as you know, Ms. Daniels. And we want to ensure that all staff, especially new hires, maintain the brand's standards. We're seeking expert help in that area. The subtext was thick, allowed a mild smile. Interesting. Could you clarify how you define upscale customer experience? Karen shifted in her seat, as though she recognized the question's weight. Well, we cater to a higher-income demographic, primarily families seeking quality products. Our staff is trained to be watchful, to ensure a certain level of environment is maintained. Nodded, carefully choosing her words. And do you have protocols on how staff interact with all customers, or do you rely on personal judgment to determine who's a serious buyer? Corinne's cheeks reddened. She swallowed, fiddling with her pen. We do have protocols, yes, but perhaps they need refining. That's part of why we're here. A hush settled. Even and sensed the tension, though they didn't fully grasp the backstory. They waited for response, slowly leaned forward, hands folded. Yes, my firm does offer specialized training in inclusive customer service, ensuring staff treat all patrons with courtesy, fairness, and respect. That approach fosters loyalty and brand reputation. I can see how it might help your business. Corinne nodded stiffly. She dared to glance at, seeming almost grateful for the neutral tone. We absolutely want that, to treat every customer with the utmost respect, she said, though the words sounded forced. Offered a polite smile, then gestured to her iPad. Great. Let's review the proposed plan. We can start with an assessment of current policies, staff interviews, and observational research at your stores. Then we'll craft a training module on unconscious bias, respectful engagement, and brand consistency. Finally, we'll do follow-up evaluations to measure improvement. The entire process can take 2 to 4 months, depending on your timeline. Looked thrilled, nodded. Corinne forced a smile. That sounds thorough, she managed. Spent another quarter-hour detailing costs, scheduling possibilities, and next steps. She addressed all three, but her gaze lingered on Corinne from time to time, letting her sense the significance of the moment. By the close, and seemed excited to proceed. They left with brochures, planning to discuss final budgeting with Corinne, who would sign off as co-owner. Thank you, Ms. Daniels, said, beaming. We'll get in touch soon for the official contract. This is very exciting for us. Rose offering a handshake. My pleasure. If you have any follow-up questions, just call my assistant. She turned to Corinne. Ms. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Corinne stood, hugging her purse to her side. She seemed flustered, wanting to escape, but also aware she needed to salvage the business relationship. No, we appreciate your time. We'll be in contact. She avoided eyes, an air of shame about her. The group filed out, except Corinne lingered a second as if she wanted to say something privately. But waited in the hall, so Corinne just gave a jerky nod and stepped out. Watched the door close, releasing a breath. She sat down, a swirl of emotions roiling in her chest. She had maintained her professionalism, yet a part of her wanted to demand an apology, to address the injustice from Saturday. Another part recognized that real accountability might come from letting Corinne see how an inclusive approach would benefit her business. There was a certain poetic justice in that. Days passed, and her team prepared an official proposal. Meanwhile, Corinne's company mulled over final details. Through occasional emails from it became clear that Corinne was stalling, possibly out of embarrassment. But eventually, they scheduled a second meeting, this time at the Little Heart Boutique's main office in a nearby suburb. Was invited to present the final contract to the entire leadership team. The idea of stepping back into that environment, a location affiliated with the same store that treated her so poorly, made stomach twist. But she refused to shy away. This was an opportunity to prove her firm's worth and to potentially transform the store's culture. She arranged a thorough presentation, printed materials, and practical examples of how inclusive training could boost revenue and brand loyalty. On the day of the meeting, drove to the suburban office park that housed the Little Heart Boutique's administrative headquarters. She wore a charcoal blazer and matching skirt, her hair in a neat bun, exuding calm confidence. Clutching her leather portfolio, she entered the lobby. A friendly receptionist guided her to a conference room. Inside, she found a table of about 10 people, including Corinne and other department heads, merchandising, marketing, store operations. Corinne stood as entered. The tension in Corinne's stance was palpable. She forced a polite greeting. Welcome, Ms. Daniels. She gestured to an empty seat. Please join us. This is our leadership team. Flashed a courteous smile. Thank you, Ms. Good morning, everyone. She introduced herself, nodded as each person offered a name and handshake. She recognized one face from Saturday, Jessica, the younger store associate, who apparently had a new role in the corporate training department. Jessica looked both surprised and relieved to see. Once pleasantries ended, launched into the prepared presentation. She explained how the training modules would be structured, how they'd address any unconscious bias among staff, how they'd create a uniform, welcoming brand experience for all customers, regardless of background or appearance. She gave examples of how other upscale retailers thrived by championing inclusivity, citing data showing revenue increases and positive customer feedback. The leadership team was attentive, and some asked thoughtful questions. Karen remained mostly silent, occasionally nodding or scribbling notes. Ended the pitch with a confident statement. Ultimately, a truly upscale experience isn't about excluding or judging customers. It's about delivering top-tier service to anyone who walks through the door. That's how you build a lasting reputation. Karen swallowed, gaze flicking around the table. She must have realized the pointed relevance. The other leaders nodded in agreement. One store manager even said, "Yes, we absolutely want every customer to feel valued, no matter who they are. That's how we'll grow." Finally, it came time to sign the contract. Slid it across the table. The legal team had already vetted it. All that remained was Karen's signature as co-owner. She flipped through the pages, pen in hand, a faint tremor in her fingers. She looked at, expression conflicted. Then with a forced smile, she signed. "Thank you," said, taking the contract back. "We look forward to working with you." Applause rippled around the table. People congratulated each other, and a few others shook hands. Jessica hovered nearby, seemingly wanting to speak to, but unsure if it was appropriate in front of the group. Eventually, the meeting wrapped up and folks began to file out. Gathered her materials, preparing to leave. That's when Karen approached, glancing around to ensure privacy. Her voice was low. "Ms. Daniels, might we speak in my office for a moment?" Looked at her calmly, guessed the reason. "Certainly." They moved to Karen's private office, a moderate-sized room with pastel walls and framed photos of baby product lines. Karen shut the door, exhaled. I wanted to say something about what happened before, at the store." Set her portfolio on a small chair, keeping her posture upright. "Yes." Karen fiddled with a pen on her desk, her eyes darting anywhere but space. "I realize now that I handled it poorly. I made assumptions. And that was unprofessional, possibly offensive. She swallowed. "I didn't know who you were." Lifted an eyebrow. "Does it matter who I am to deserve basic courtesy?" Karen grimaced, shaking her head. "No, that's not what I meant. I'm not used to being called out like this, but I see that it was wrong. I shouldn't have been so quick to judge. And I definitely shouldn't have tried to block your purchase. I was suspicious, but that suspicion was misplaced." "I'm sorry." Silence pulsed in the room. Studied Karen's expression, trying to gauge sincerity. She sensed Karen's discomfort was genuine, though it might be driven by fear of losing a lucrative contract or embarrassment at the power reversal. Still, the apology was better than nothing. Nodded once. "I appreciate the apology, but I hope you realize it's not just about me. If that's how you treat any customer who doesn't look the part in your eyes, you risk alienating a lot of people. That's precisely the kind of bias we'll need to address in the training. Are you prepared for that?" Karen let out a breath, shoulders sagging. "Yes, that's why we signed on. I do want to improve. The last few days after meeting you, I've been thinking a lot about how I've run my stores. We can't afford negative word of mouth, and it's not right to judge people so quickly." She pressed her lips together. "If you're willing, I'd like to start fresh. Let's focus on making the Little Heart Boutique better." Regarded her. There was a sense of vulnerability in Karen's eyes. It didn't erase what had happened, but it was a step in the right direction. Extended her hand. "All right, let's do that." Karen shook her hand, relief flickering across her face. For a moment they stood there in an uneasy truce, then collected her portfolio. "I'll see you at our first training session next week." Karen opened the door, voice soft. "Yes, see you then, and thank you." As walked out, Jessica caught her in the hallway. She spoke quietly, eyes bright with admiration. "Ms. Daniels, I just wanted to say I'm so glad you're leading this training. That day at the store, I felt awful about how you were treated. I'm sorry I didn't step up sooner." Offered a reassuring smile. "It's okay, Jessica. I appreciate you speaking up at the moment with the second register. That helped." Jessica grinned. "Thanks, I'm excited to learn from you. We can do better." She nodded firmly, then returned to her desk. In the weeks that followed, and her consulting team rolled out the training program. They started with a thorough assessment of store policies, observing staff-customer interactions, and hosting feedback sessions. Karen participated, sometimes stiffly, but with a noticeable effort to adapt. The sessions on unconscious bias were eye-opening for many employees, including Karen, who publicly acknowledged some bad habits of stereotyping certain customers. Over time, the staff learned new techniques for greeting, assisting, and respecting all patrons equally. Led many of these sessions personally. She maintained a professional demeanor, focusing on facts and best practices. Yet her presence alone was a powerful statement. The very woman Karen once tried to humiliate was now teaching the entire organization how to treat customers with dignity. Word spread among employees about how their new lead consultant had faced prejudice in one of the flagship stores. Some whispered about Karen's comeuppance. Others praised graciousness in not blasting Karen publicly. The result was a slow but genuine culture shift within the Little Heart boutique. Employees began to greet all customers with genuine warmth, dropping the suspicious undertones. They installed updated POS systems to avoid technical glitches. They added a robust staff manual with guidelines that emphasized courtesy and inclusivity. About a month in, dropped by the original downtown store, an unannounced visit to see how things were going. She found the younger staff friendlier, quicker to offer assistance, but not in a pushy or condescending way. Jessica, who was temporarily assigned there to oversee training on site, lit up when she saw, "How's it going?" Asked, scanning the store's displays. Jessica beamed. "Good, we're rotating in new signage, plus I made sure the staff has a uniform approach to greeting. No more singled out, can I help you?" To certain customers while ignoring others, "It feels a lot better." Nodded, "I can tell. The vibe is more welcoming." She noticed a few families browsing comfortably, an older woman admiring baby blankets. She pictured Ebony visiting after her baby was born, feeling at ease, not scrutinized. That gave a sense of satisfaction. Just then, Karen entered from the back, wearing a calm expression. She spotted, pausing. Their eyes met across the store. After a moment, Karen approached, hands loosely clasped. "Ms. Daniels," she greeted, voice measured but polite. "Welcome back." "Thank you," replied, letting a small smile show. "I'm just seeing how things are shaping up." Karen gave a tiny nod, shifting her weight. "We've made several changes thanks to your team's guidance. I believe we're seeing an uptick in sales and fewer complaints. It's promising." Nick glanced at the plush animals, remembering the fiasco with the crocheted elephant. "I'm glad," she said softly. "I hope the environment is better for everyone, staff and customers alike." "It is," Karen said. Her gaze lingered on, and for a split second, regret flashed across Karen's face. "I guess I should say, once again, I'm sorry for what happened that day. I have no excuse. I was wrong." Studied Karen's features. She could sense that this apology was less about fear of losing a contract and more a genuine admission of wrongdoing. A glimmer of empathy rose in. "Thank you," she said. "I appreciate that. The important thing is learning and moving forward." Karen gave a faint, relieved smile. "Yes, moving forward." She offered a handshake and accepted it, sealing a silent understanding. As turned to leave, she spotted a crocheted giraffe on display, another handmade plush, reminiscent of that elephant. She stroked its knitted surface, recalling the sting of having her card declined. She felt an odd sense of closure, standing in that same store now respected as a top consultant, forging positive change. The circle was complete. On the day Ebony's baby shower finally arrived, carried that linen elephant in a beautifully wrapped box to the venue. Friends and family gathered in a sun-drenched community hall, decked in pink and white balloons, a buffet table laden with snacks, and a display of baby photos. Ebony, radiant in a flowy dress, greeted guests with laughter and excitement. Beamed when she saw her best friend's obvious joy. When the time for opening gifts arrived, Ebony unwrapped the crocheted elephant from, gasping at its charm. "This is gorgeous. Where did you find it?" Smiled. "A boutique downtown. It's handcrafted just like you love. I hope it becomes a treasured keepsake." Ebony clutched the elephant gently, tears sparkling in her eyes. "It's perfect, thank you so much." She didn't know the full backstory, but felt satisfied seeing Ebony's delight. That made all the difficulties worth it. After the shower, Ebony pulled aside, hugging her tight. "I love you, girl. You always find the most thoughtful gifts." Hugged back, heart full. "Love you too, I'm just glad you're happy." As she drove home, reflected on how even a simple stuffed animal could become a catalyst for growth and justice. Karen had tried to humiliate her, but in the end, Karen's true identity as a co-owner of a brand desperately needing. Expertise was revealed, and so was identity as a capable, influential CEO. The moral lesson rang clear. Prejudice can backfire spectacularly when you never know who someone truly is behind appearances. And genuine change can occur if people choose to acknowledge their biases and take steps to correct them. In the weeks that followed, continued her routine, leading her firm, shaping her clients' cultures, cherishing her friendships, expanding her personal library of rare books. She'd occasionally receive updates from the Little Heart Boutique about new store openings and more inclusive practices. The memory of that humiliating Saturday morning had softened into a reminder of her own resilience and the transformative power of confronting bias with grace. And as for Karen, she implemented the training, watched her stores thrive, and carried with her the lesson that you never truly know the worth or background of the person standing in front of you. In the quiet moments, Karen likely recalled that day behind the register, how she misjudged a woman who ended up being the very consultant she needed for her business. That memory surely stung, but it also spurred personal growth. She told once in a private conversation that she was determined never to repeat the mistake of judging by appearance alone. Thus, life moved forward, and the tale of white Karen tries to humiliate a black customer. Then her true identity is revealed, became a testament to how swiftly fortunes can flip, and how sometimes the path to redemption comes from acknowledging your own errors. For her part, took satisfaction in seeing a place of prejudice transform, even if only incrementally, into a space of acceptance. She'd continue her work, shining a light on the subtle injustices lurking in everyday encounters, until one day such humiliations might be relics of the past. In the end, the crocheted elephant sat in Ebony's nursery, a symbol of love and friendship. And in its quiet way, it also represented the day that bigotry met a resolute force in Daniels, and discovered that every person, no matter how unassuming they appear, may hold the power to spark change. Its quiet strength had turned an ugly moment into a victory, for both herself and for a store that learned to treat every customer with the dignity they deserve.